If you're thinking about moving to Connecticut, you need to hear this, because whether you choose Western Connecticut or Eastern Connecticut can completely change your lifestyle. We all might share the same state name, but trust me, these are two very different worlds. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly which side fits your version of the good life. And make sure you stay till the end, because I have a little twist. Connecticut is very small, as we all know. You can drive across it in about 2 hours. But the west side and the east side might as well be two completely different states. So first, let's start off with the vibe, because honestly, that's what you're going to feel first. Western Connecticut, especially towns like Greenwich, Westport, Ridgefield, feel fast-paced and polished. People that live there are typically connected to New York, either commuting in or working remotely for a Manhattan-based company. Think high-end shopping, private clubs, Teslas at stoplights, that whole commuter belt lifestyle. So to be honest, Western Connecticut, especially Southwestern Connecticut, feels just like an extension of New York. Now let's take a line and draw it right down the middle of the state. So we're talking New Haven on the shoreline, Middletown in central Connecticut, and Hartford in the north. So when you drive across that magical line, it's like the tempo just drops. Eastern Connecticut, places like Mystic, Woodstock, or Norwich, are much more quiet, more local, and way more laid back. Here you'll see pickup trucks instead of Porsches, seafood shacks instead of steakhouses, and festivals where everybody knows your name. So if you've ever said to yourself, I want to slow down, but I don't want to be bored, Eastern Connecticut might be your area. Now let's talk about everybody's favorite topic, money, because housing is where the difference really hits hard. On the western side of the state, whether it's Fairfield County or Litchfield County, the houses, on average, are much more expensive. For example, in Fairfield County, the average single-family home is between $800,000 and $1.2 million, depending on the town. In some of these towns, let's be honest, $1.2 million is a fixer-upper. So really, you can pick any town near the New York border, and it's pretty much the same story. Though some of them are more extreme than others, it's still very expensive to live there. But now you head east, say places like Norwich, Preston, Griswold, and you can find that same size home for $300,000 to $450,000. And you might think, well, you're picking these obscure eastern towns, but even coastal towns in eastern Connecticut, like Mystic and Stonington, though pricier because, again, they are on the water, they're still far below Fairfield County and New Haven County water views. So when you live in eastern Connecticut, you're trading in the proximity to New York for more breathing room. And in some cases, double the house for half the price. So if you're still commuting and like being near major cities, Western Connecticut wins on access. From Stamford, you're only 50 minutes by train to Grand Central. And from areas like Danbury or Norwalk, though it is little bit of a longer commute, you still have I-95, the Merritt Parkway, and the Metro-North Railroads. Eastern Connecticut, though, that's a different story. You're closer to Providence or even Boston than you are to New York. And there's really no major commuter train network, just highways like I-395 and Route 2. So there is Shoreline East on the coast, but the schedule is very spotty. And you can still catch Amtrak in some shoreline towns. But if you don't live near the shoreline, you're kind of out of luck in eastern Connecticut. Also, your airport choices are going to be very different. If your job's remote and you only need to fly out of a Bradley or a Providence airport once in a while, then you're fine to be in eastern Connecticut. Even though Bradley says it's an international airport, let's be honest. They have like 3 direct routes out of the country, and otherwise you're always laying over in New York or Boston to get to where you want to go. But if you live on the western side of the state, you have way more options as far as airports. You have JFK, LaGuardia, Newark, and 2 smaller regional airports with Westchester and Newburgh. And I have to give a little shout out to our Tweed Airport here in New Haven, because if you live in Western or Eastern Connecticut, you can go there and it's amazing and we want it to stay there. Now let's talk career-wise. Western Connecticut is tied into finance, insurance, tech, and consulting. And to be honest, a lot of people that live in the western part of the state work in New York and earn those big salaries, but live in Connecticut for more space and great schools. And Eastern Connecticut has a totally different economy. It's more healthcare, defense, and tourism. Some of the big employers on the eastern part of the state are Electric Boat and Pfizer, but they also have a huge, thriving tourism scene there between Mystic and Stonington. And lifestyle can be the biggest personal deciding factor. In Western Connecticut, weekends might look something like brunch in Sono, which is South Norwalk, dinner in Westport, or even grabbing a quick train into the city to see a show. The schools are highly ranked. There's no shortage of private options too. And the pace is driven. People here are career focused and are busy, busy, busy. In Eastern Connecticut, it's just way more laid back. Think farmers markets, kayaking on the Connecticut River, hitting small breweries, or walking the shoreline. You'll find historic homes, fewer chains, and a real sense of community. Weather-wise, it's mostly the same across the state. Cold winters, humid summers, but the geography feels very different. Western Connecticut has more rolling hills and kind of has that like Hudson Valley feel. If you like wooded back roads and hiking, you'll probably like the western part of the state. There also tends to be a higher snowfall total there. The northwestern corner is known as the freezer of Connecticut. They usually have the coldest temperatures and the highest snowfall. And Eastern Connecticut is definitely more rural overall, less hilly, but does have some great coastline and river access. And to be honest, it can have a different weather pattern closer to the shore because they actually sit like right on the cusp of the Atlantic Ocean there, where on the western part of the shoreline, it's squarely on Long Island Sound. And now for the little twist. Property taxes in Connecticut are pretty steady. They can change a little town to town, but they're not wildly different. So you might think you're buying a $2 million home in Greenwich, your property taxes are going to be astronomical. But they're not, comparatively speaking. The mill rate in Greenwich, which is the percentage they use to calculate your property tax, is actually very low because the value of the properties there are so high. They can't have high mill rates on high property values because then nobody could afford it. Meanwhile, in Eastern Connecticut, even though the homes cost less, your tax rate might be higher than a Greenwich, and likely is. So though your house may have only cost you $400,000, you still might be carrying a heavy property tax bill. So to be honest, no matter where you live, taxes are gonna get you here. So you can't say taxes are a deciding factor when you're looking at Eastern or Western Connecticut. But I'd still have to say that your day-to-day expenses, like groceries, maybe gas, eating out, tend to be a little bit cheaper on the eastern part of the state, but not dramatically different. So here's the big takeaway. Western Connecticut is for people who still want that connection to New York, the fast-paced energy, and that suburban lifestyle that has access to major cities and transportation. Eastern Connecticut is more for someone who wants calm, more space, nature, and that small town New England rhythm. Neither is better, they're just different. So, if you're planning on moving to Connecticut, you need to ask yourself, do you want that fast-paced, high-energy lifestyle in Western Connecticut, or that slower, small-town charm feel of Eastern Connecticut? If you found this breakdown helpful, please hit the like button and subscribe. I don't want you to miss all my great Connecticut content. Drop a comment below and let me know what you think of Eastern versus Western Connecticut. Do you have a preference? And as always, thank you for watching and have a great day.